Companies that sell products to the public have to follow a fine line. On the one hand, they need to sell stuff to make money, and the way they do that is by making a good product. However, if their product is too good, then people might not need to buy it again, or at least for a very long time. Almost 100 years ago, a consortium of industrialists tried to solve this problem by plotting to make their products worse just so people would buy more of them. Learn more about the Phoebus Cartel and planned obsolescence on this episode of Everything Everywhere Daily. This episode is sponsored by ExpressVPN. Did you know that internet service providers, including mobile network providers, know every single website you visit? And in the United States, ISPs are legally allowed to sell that information to advertisers. And that is just one of many reasons why you need to use a virtual private network or VPN. ExpressVPN reroutes 100% of your traffic through secure encrypted servers, so your ISP can't see your browsing history. Moreover, unlike other VPN companies you might have heard about, ExpressVPN uses what they call trusted server architecture. Their server runs entirely in RAM with no hard drives, meaning that after a reboot, nothing persists and there are no logs. ExpressVPN's apps are available on phones, laptops, tablets, and smart TVs. ExpressVPN now has a permanent home on my desktop and my Apple TV to allow me better and more secure access to more content. Secure your online data today by visiting expressvpn.com/EED. That's expressvpn.com/EED to find out how you can get up to 4 extra months. expressvpn.com/EED. This episode is sponsored by Uncommon Goods. The holiday shopping season is officially here. Uncommon Goods takes the stress out of gifting with thousands of unique, high-quality finds you won't see anywhere else. Don't wait, because the most meaningful gifts get scooped up fast, and now is the perfect time to cross names off your list. Uncommon Goods looks for high-quality, unique products, often handmade or made in the United States. Many are crafted by independent artists and small businesses, making every gift feel meaningful and truly one of a kind. I've already told you about the cheese board I got on Uncommon Goods, but another cool item I found was a wall hanging made from wood that reproduces the sound wave of your favorite song or podcast. So don't wait. Cross those names off your list before the rush. To get 15% off your next gift, go to uncommongoods.com/daily. That's uncommongoods.com/daily for 15% off. Uncommon Goods. We're all out of the ordinary. The history of businesses working together against the public to make money goes back a long way. In 1776, Adam Smith wrote in The Wealth of Nations, quote, "People of the same trade seldom meet together, even for merriment and diversion, but the conversation ends in a conspiracy against the public or in some contrivance to raise prices." End quote. There is probably no better example in history of this than the collusion of light bulb manufacturers in the 1920s and 30s. In the early 1920s, the electric light bulb industry faced a peculiar problem that would seem counterintuitive to modern business thinking. Their products were becoming too good. By the early 1920s, manufacturers had successfully created incandescent bulbs that could last 2,500 hours or more, with some experimental bulbs demonstrating lifespans exceeding 100,000 hours. The famous Centennial light bulb in Livermore, California, which has burned almost continuously since 1901, stands as a testament to the durability that was achieved with early carbon filament technology. The bulb, which is still in service at the Livermore Pleasanton Fire Department, has been operating nonstop for 125 years, totaling over 1 million hours of service. Its longevity is attributed to its low wattage and to its exceptional construction. While that particular bulb might be an outlier, it does reflect the general improvement in light bulb quality that was taking place in the early 20th century. This remarkable longevity in bulbs created a significant economic challenge for manufacturers. The longer bulbs lasted, the fewer replacements consumers needed to buy, which led to declining sales and reduced profits for the entire industry. The light bulb had become a victim of its own success, and major manufacturers recognized that their business model was unsustainable if products continued to improve in durability. And there was also something else. Firms such as General Electric in the United States, AEG and Siemens in Germany built strong domestic positions through patent portfolios, while newer entrants such as Philips in the Netherlands and Tungsram in Hungary aggressively pushed into foreign markets. Osram from Germany had already spearheaded an earlier price and patent pool called the Internationale Glühlampenpreisvereinigung, founded in 1921 to coordinate prices and market shares in Europe. When European manufacturers began to challenge General Electric in the United States, GE responded by organizing International General Electric in Paris to manage its overseas rights and cross-licensing. The proliferation of overlapping light bulb patents combined with dumping accusations and price wars destabilized the entire industry. Negotiations among major firms shifted towards a more formalized global cartel that would manage patents, markets, and technical standards. On December 23, 1924, representatives from the world's leading light bulb companies gathered in Geneva, Switzerland to address this crisis. The meeting brought together Osram, Philips, the Compagnie des Lampes from France, Associated Electrical Industries from Britain, General Electric, and several other major manufacturers. Together, these companies formed Phoebus SA, a Swiss corporation that would serve as the administrative body for their cartel. The name Phoebus was chosen as a reference to Phoebus Apollo, the Greek god of light. The primary objective of the Phoebus Cartel was to standardize the lifespan of incandescent light bulbs at precisely 1,000 hours, a dramatic reduction from the 2,500-hour light bulbs that were common at the time. This was not presented to the public as a reduction in quality, but was instead framed internally as a matter of standardization and efficiency optimization. The cartel established an intricate system of oversight and enforcement. Member companies were required to submit their bulbs for testing at independent laboratories. If a manufacturer's bulbs consistently exceeded the 1,000-hour standard, they faced substantial fines. The penalty structure was carefully designed to make compliance more profitable than producing longer-lasting bulbs. Companies that produced bulbs averaging more than 1,005 hours were penalized, with fines calculated based on the excess lifetime and number of non-compliant bulbs produced. This enforcement mechanism was remarkably effective. Historical testing data shows that the average lifespan of incandescent bulbs dropped dramatically after the cartel's formation. By the late 1920s, the 1,000-hour standard had become the industry norm throughout much of the developed world. The cartel had successfully engineered a less durable product and convinced most of the global market to accept it. Beyond controlling product lifespans, Phoebus also functioned as a traditional cartel in other respects. Member companies divided global markets amongst themselves, agreed not to compete in each other's territories, shared patents and technical knowledge, and collectively suppressed innovations that might threaten the agreed-upon product standards. The organization maintained extensive documentation of these arrangements, creating a paper trail that would later provide historians and legal scholars with remarkable insight into the cartel's operations. Here I should note that this wasn't really a secret. Phoebus SA was set up as a legal corporation, and its creation was announced in the official Swiss commercial register, which listed its name, purpose, and shareholders, just like any other corporation. However, it sat in a gray area of everyone in the industry knows, but almost no one in the public does. If you were a competitor, a lawyer, or a government official paying attention to industrial organization, Phoebus was not some mysterious cabal in the shadows. It was a known cartel in a sector where patent pools and market-sharing agreements were already common. The core of the agreement, however, with its precise clauses on territorial division, production quotas, and especially light bulb lifespans, was not published to the public or made available to governments. At its peak, the Phoebus Cartel controlled approximately 90% of the world's light bulb production. This near monopoly gave the organization extraordinary power over the global lighting industry. The cartel's influence extended across Europe, North America, parts of Asia, and Latin America. In markets where cartel members faced independent competitors, they often employed aggressive tactics to force compliance or drive rivals out of business. In the United States, General Electric played a particularly dominant role both within Phoebus and in the broader American market. GE had already established significant control over the domestic light bulb industry through its aggressive patent litigation strategy and had absorbed or neutralized most independent American manufacturers by the time Phoebus was formed. The cartel arrangement allowed GE to coordinate its activities with international competitors while maintaining its dominance in the American market. The cartel's control extended beyond just manufacturing. Phoebus members influenced distribution networks, retail partnerships, and even electrical standards. This comprehensive market control made it extremely difficult for independent manufacturers to challenge the 1,000-hour standard, even in countries where the cartel's formal agreements had no legal standing. The Phoebus Cartel's operations began to face serious challenges in the 1930s as economic and political conditions deteriorated globally. The Great Depression reduced consumer spending and intensified scrutiny of business practices, while the rise of nationalist economic policies in various countries made international cartels increasingly problematic. Some governments began investigating the cartel's activities, particularly as public awareness of the 1,000-hour standard grew. The final blow to Phoebus came with the outbreak of World War II in 1939. The war made international coordination between companies and hostile nations impossible, and the cartel's operations effectively ceased. Many companies in different countries found themselves on opposite sides of the conflict, and practical mechanisms for enforcing the cartel's agreements broke down completely. However, by this time, the 1,000-hour standard had become so deeply embedded in manufacturing practices and consumer expectations that it persisted long after the formal cartel structure disappeared. The engineering decisions, production techniques, and market conditions that Phoebus had established continued to shape the light bulb industry for decades. Even today, many incandescent light bulbs are designed to last approximately 1,000 hours, a testament to the cartel's lasting influence. The Phoebus Cartel operated in a legal gray area throughout its existence. While some nations had antitrust laws that theoretically prohibited such arrangements, international cartels were difficult to prosecute, and enforcement was often weak or non-existent. The cartel's Swiss headquarters provided a degree of legal protection, as Swiss law was relatively permissive towards international business arrangements. After World War II, as governments and international organizations developed stronger antitrust laws, the Phoebus Cartel became a case study in anti-competitive behavior. Documents seized from the cartel's offices provided extensive evidence of price fixing, market division, and deliberate product degradation. These documents have since been studied by economists, legal scholars, and historians as a prime example of how industrial cartels operate and the harm they can cause to consumers and innovation. I should note that there is in fact a technical argument in favor of incandescent light bulbs with shorter lifespans. Supporters of shorter-lived incandescent bulbs argued that there's a natural trade-off between lifespan and performance. A filament run at lower temperature can last much longer, but it produces dimmer, yellower, and less efficient light. By contrast, a hotter filament gives brighter, whiter illumination and higher efficiency, but it burns out sooner. Engineers in the 1920s claimed that a standardized 1,000-hour life struck a practical balance. It delivered better light quality, reduced power consumption, enabled a more predictable system design for utilities, and avoided the inconsistent performance of very long life but low efficiency bulbs. While there is a point to the argument, if that were the case, then the market would have just adopted the more efficient, brighter bulbs that didn't last as long, and the entire Phoebus Cartel wouldn't have been necessary. Obsolescence is something that is still an issue. However, rather than forming cartels, most companies solve the problem through product improvements. The thing with a light bulb is that a light bulb is just a light bulb. It's fundamentally a consumable item with a much longer time span than most consumable items. Smartphone manufacturers are finding that consumers aren't upgrading their devices as often. Any new smartphone you buy today is pretty good, and it'll last you for several years. To get people to upgrade, smartphone manufacturers have to consistently release new features in the hopes that it will entice people to buy new phones. And every year, this becomes more difficult as the phones are already feature-rich. Likewise, automobiles last much longer than they used to. In the mid-20th century, it was common for a car to be worn out by around 100,000 miles, and many people treated that as the effective life of a vehicle. Typical modern vehicles can often reach 200,000 miles or more with proper maintenance, and many brands and models routinely exceed that. This is primarily due to better rust protection, improved engine and transmission design, tighter manufacturing tolerances, more reliable electronics, and better lubricants and fluids. Instead of planned obsolescence, automakers now charge much more for vehicles and, like smartphones, add more features. You almost never see cartels like the Phoebus Cartel anymore because of the level of antitrust scrutiny governments around the world have. Unless, of course, the governments are the cartel, as in the case of OPEC. While the Phoebus Cartel was short-lived, it had a lasting legacy. Its 1,000-hour standard for incandescent bulbs survived the cartel. Perhaps more than that, it gave researchers and governments a case study of what to look for in collusion in cartels. But most of all, it just made people buy a whole lot more light bulbs. The executive producer of Everything Everywhere Daily is Charles Daniel. The associate producers are Austin Oetken and Cameron Kieffer. My big thanks go to everyone who supports the show over on Patreon. Your support helps make this podcast possible. And I also want to remind everyone about the community groups on Facebook and Discord. That's where everything happens that's outside the podcast, and links to those are available in the show notes. As always, if you leave a review on any major podcast app or in the above community groups, you too can have it read on the show.